Okay, in this video we are going to work on questions involving finding the equation of a line. So this particular formula here, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1, is in your log tables, okay? And this is primarily the formula that you're going to use whenever you're asked in any way to find the equation of a line. So there's two things you need. You need the point. That's what will sub in for the x1, y1, and you need a slope. So they're the two key pieces of information. You might be given them very clearly in the question, or you may not. You may need to look further into the question as to where you might be able to pull out those two pieces of information, because those two pieces of information are absolutely necessary to be able to find the equation of any line. You need a point and you need a slope. So any point on the line will do, and you need the slope of the line as well. So remember, there's three ways you can find your slope, so go back and revise the video on that. So once you have a slope of the line, once you have any point on the line as well, then you have the information to be able to find the equation of the line using this formula: y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, let's jump straight into playing around with this formula and trying a few questions. Okay, let's try this question. Using this information, the point 1, 2 is on the line, the slope of the line is 2, find the equation of that line. Okay, so your formula of course is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Pause the video and see how you get on with this. Okay, so the first thing you would do, like a lot of coordinate geometry formula, is label your points x1, y1. And the slope, of course, is 2. So the only places you are inputting this information is here, here, and here. Okay, so let's do that. So everything else stays the same. The y, the minus, the equal sign here, the bracket, the x, minus, and the bracket. The only things that you are actually inputting into this formula are those three pieces of information in those boxes. Okay, so let's do that. So y minus y1, of course, is 2, equals m is 2, because that's the slope, so that comes next, so fill that in, then bracket, and then x minus, and x1 is, of course, 1. So that's what we have. Now we don't leave it in that form. We do have to multiply out these brackets here and tidy it up a little bit. So multiplying out the 2, let's keep the left hand side the same, y minus 2, and then we get 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times minus 1 is minus 2. Okay, so that's our multiplication done. And now what we'll do to tidy it up is we'll tidy up the number work. In other words, we'll get rid of the minus 2 on this side by adding 2, and of course that means we then add 2 to this side. So that will leave me with y on its own equals 2x. So that's the way we would tidy it up, and that is therefore the equation of a line. Just to note, sometimes there are different rearrangements of this equation that would also be equivalent, okay? And they may ask for it in the question to be put in a particular form. So one of the other classic forms they might look for is that you have nothing on one side. So in other words, maybe that we take away the y from both sides to leave nothing on one side, but then that would leave you with 2x minus y on the right hand side. So that is correct, but also that first answer there is also perfectly accurate and correct. These are both the very same. They are just manipulations of each other, and they are the equation of the line containing the point 1, 2 and the slope 2. Try this question. Again, we want the equation of the line with the point minus 3, 2 and slope 4. Pause the video, see how you get on with this. So the first thing you're always going to do is write down the relevant formula for yourself from the log tables, and then we will label our points, of course, x1, y1, and 4 is, of course, m. So let's fill those pieces of information into our formula. So we have y minus y1 is filled in next, which is 2, equals m, which is 4, bracket, x minus, and x1 in this case is minus 3. Now, okay, before I go to start multiplying out the brackets here, I would suggest that you tidy up this bracket first, okay? So keep the left-hand side as it is, keep the 4, keep the bracket, and x minus minus 3. X take away a negative 3, if you remember from before, is like adding 3. A minus minus 3 is like adding 3. Whenever you take away a negative number, it has the effect of adding. So a minus minus 3 is the same as add 3. Now let's multiply by the 4. So keep the left hand side the same. 4 times x is 4x, 4 times 3 is 12, and now we'll tidy up the number work. So we'll get rid of the minus 2 on the left hand side by adding 2. If I add 2 on the left hand side, I've got to add 2 on the right hand side, so I get y equals 4x plus 14. And there's your answer. And I am also going to manipulate it in another way. If I was to take y from both sides, I would get 0, 4x minus y plus 14, which is also correct. Okay, try this question. Pause the video, see how you get on. Find the equation of the line containing the point minus 2, 4, and which is the slope of minus 2. Okay, so again, take down the formula for yourself. Make sure you're taking it down accurately, and we will label our points x1, y1, and of course m is minus 2. Okay, let's fill it into our formula. So we have y minus, y1 in this case is 4, equals m is minus 2, bracket, x minus, and x1 is minus 2. Okay, so again we have this minus minus 2. So that's the first thing I'm going to deal with. So leave everything else the same. Let's just tidy up inside this bracket. And I would advise you to just do one little thing per step. It is often the case when pupils try to do the multiplying and the tidying up and a couple of things in one go, that's where they make mistakes. So it really is a good strategy to always just do one element of tidying up per step. So x minus minus 2 is the same as x plus 2. And now we'll multiply in by the minus 2, leave the left hand side as it is, y minus 4, and minus 2 times x is minus 2x, and minus 2 times plus 2, a minus by a plus, of course, is minus. 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, tidying up the number work, if I add 4 to the left hand side, I've got to add 4 to the right hand side, so I'm left with y minus 2x, and of course that is nothing, so there's my answer. And again, if I take away y from both sides, I would get minus 2x minus y, or, which is correct, by the way, but also another way of writing that, if I want to get rid of the minuses, I could multiply the whole thing by minus. Once I do it to everything, multiply that by minus 1, multiply that by minus 1, and multiply that by minus 1, I would get a change of sign. So that's also correct as well. Okay, find the equation of this line. Pause the video, see how you get on. So again, taking down my formula for myself. Labeling my points, x1, y1, the slope, in other words, the m is a half this time. Let's fill in what we have. So y minus y1, of course, is 4, equals m, which is a half, and then bracket x minus, and then x1 is minus 1. Okay, as before, I'm just going to tidy up this bracket first. So leave the left hand side as it is, and we have a half. X minus minus 1 is the same as x plus 1. Okay, now just to note that once you get to this point here, by the way, subbing everything in correctly, you have got the vast majority of the marks. There's the good news. It is the tidying up that often causes pupils issues, and there's going to be a further issue here now because I have this nasty half. Now, I don't really want to have to multiply in by a half. That's just going to lead me to getting more fractions, which I don't really want to have to deal with. So, because it's an equation, I can always get rid of this divide by 2, get rid of this denominator. Because what I do to the left-hand side, as long as I do the same thing to the right-hand side, then I can manipulate this equation in any way I wish, and it will still keep all the values equivalent. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get rid of this divide by 2 by multiplying by 2 on this side, okay? And you only have to multiply in once because this half is being multiplied to the x plus 1. This is like one whole term, okay? So once you multiply this by 2, you are multiplying the whole side by 2, okay? It's attached, so it's one term is one way you can look at this on the right-hand side. Now, if I multiply this right-hand side by 2, which is what I'm doing here, I have got to multiply the left-hand side by 2 as well. And what that now allows me to do is 2 times a half, that will cancel with that. So here's what I'm left with. I'm left with 2 times y minus 4 on the left-hand side, and 1, that 1 is still there, times x plus 1 on the right-hand side. So now multiplying out the brackets, on the left-hand side I'm multiplying by 2. 2 times y is 2y, 2 times minus 4 is minus 8, 1 times x is x, and 1 times 1 is 1. So this is what I have. And now tidying up my number work, I'll add 8 to both sides. I get 2y equals x plus 9, so that's correct. And again, if they wanted you to specifically put it in a different format, another classic format would be, again, as I said, to get 0 on the left-hand side. And in order to get 0 on the left-hand side, you would take away 2y from both sides. So you'd be left with this. Also correct. Okay, try this question. Find the equation of the line who has a point 5 minus 2 on it, and the slope of the line is 2/3. Pause the video, see how you get on with this. Okay, so again, y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1 is the formula you're always going to use for the equation of a line. So the point, let's label it x1, y1, and the slope, therefore the m is 2/3. Okay, so let's sub it in. So we have y minus y1 in this case is minus 2 equals m is 2/3, and x minus x1 of course is 5. And again, you've got the majority of the marks once you've got that inputted correctly. So now let's tidy up the left hand side. Y minus minus 2 is the same as y plus 2. Okay, now I don't want to have to deal with this divide by 3, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply this side by 3. That will get rid of the divide by 3 here. But if I'm multiplying the right hand side by 3, remember you've got to multiply the left hand side by 3 as well. So again, and I would always write out the first or the next step before I do any multiplication, okay? I'm multiplying the left hand side by 3 like that, and it's the 2 that's left here on top that's going to be multiplied to the x minus 5 on the right hand side. Now I'm going to multiply out my brackets. 3 times y is 3y, 3 times 2 is 6, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times minus 5 is minus 10. So I have this. So again, tidying up the number work, I'm going to take away 6 from both sides, and I'm left with 3y equals 2x. Minus 10 minus 6 is minus 16. Okay, so that is my answer, and that is correct. And again, a different format might be to get 0 on the left hand side, so taking away 3y from the left hand side and minus 3y on the right hand side would give me this. Also correct. Okay, try this question. Find the equation of the line containing the points minus 2, 3 and 3, 1. Pause the video and see how you get on with this. Okay, so this is a little bit different in that we're not given a clear point and a clear slope. We're given 2 points and no slope, okay? But you know you need the slope for this formula. So the first thing I'm going to do is find a slope. So what are your 3 ways of finding a slope? Remember, one of the first ways of finding the slope is using the slope formula, and you would use the slope formula when you were given 2 points. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. So slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So label our points x1, y1, x2, y2, and let's find the slope. So subbing that in, the slope is going to be y2, which is 1, minus y1, which is 3, over x2, which is 3, minus and x1, which is minus 2. Okay, let's tidy this up. 1 minus 3 is minus 2. And 3 minus minus 2, of course, is the same as 3 plus 2, which is therefore 5. So the slope of the line is minus 2/5. Okay, now we have that vital piece of information. The other piece of information I need is x1, y1. Well, I do have x1, y1 because this point is on the line, and so is this point on the line. So technically, I could use either of these points. Once I have one point on the line that I can use, it doesn't matter which point you use, okay? So either of these will work once I have this slope and one of these points. I'm going to go ahead and use this one because I already have it labeled x1, y1. So let's go ahead and start filling in this formula now. So y minus y1, which in this case is 3, equals, the slope is minus 2/5, x minus x1 is minus 2. Okay, lots of nasty things here. I have lots of minuses, and I even have a minus and a fraction for the slope. But the good news is once you have this bit filled in correctly, you have got the majority of the marks, okay? Right, let's go and start tidying up. And again, do it bit by bit and you will be less likely to make a mistake here. So the first bit I'm going to do is the x minus minus 2. So leaving the left-hand side as it is, minus 2/5, and I get x minus minus 2, which is the same as x plus 2. Okay, now I'm going to go and get rid of the divide by 5, which means I'm going to multiply this side by 5. Okay, just as I would have done before. That 5 will then cancel with the divide by 5 there. But of course, if I'm multiplying the right-hand side by 5, I've got to multiply the left-hand side by 5. Okay, before I multiply it out, I'm just going to write it out for myself. So I have on the left-hand side 5 times y minus 3. On the right-hand side, I'm left with minus 2 still on top and x plus 2. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and multiply out my brackets. So 5 times y is 5y, 5 times minus 3 is minus 15, minus 2 times x is minus 2x, and minus 2 times plus 2. A minus by a plus is minus, of course, and 2 times 2 is 4. Okay, so I'm going to add 15 to both sides, and that gives me 5y minus 2x, and minus 4 plus 15 is a positive 11. Okay, so that's your answer, and that's correct. And if I was to tidy it up a little bit further and get 0 on the left-hand side, I'd be taking away 5y from the left-hand side, which means I've got to take away 5y on the right-hand side, which would give me this. And again, just in case the question asks you to give it in a particular format, if we were to change all the signs, which you can do once you do it to everything in the equation, change the sign, or in other words, multiply by minus 1, you would get this, which again is also correct. They are 3 different manipulations of each other, but all perfectly accurate and equations of the line that I'm looking for. So I've just one last little thing I want to cover with you, and that is in the log tables you are given this formula for the equation of a line. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. But also what is there is y equals mx plus c, which is also another form of the equation of the line. And we've seen where this is particularly useful to us in rearranging in that form, of course, means we can pull out the slope. Now there's just one other thing I want to highlight about this. If I'm finding the equation of the line, this is usually most definitely the easiest one to work with. And of course, as we know, the 2 things you need are the point x1, y1 and the slope m. This can be used when, of course, you do know what the slope is and when you know what this value here is. And that's what I want to highlight and talk about now in this section. This C value, the number that will go in here, this is basically where this line cuts the y-axis, okay? So the M we know is the slope. The C is what's called the y-intercept. In other words, where this line cuts the y-axis. Now I'm going to talk about this again in my video on intersecting lines, okay? But I'm just going to talk about it briefly here because it does come up, as I said, in the log tables, right where you have the formula for equation of the line. So if you happen to see exactly where your line cuts the y-axis because you've been given a graph, then this is a nice, easy formula to use. Once you have the slope and you can spot exactly where it's being cut on the y-axis, then you can put that value in there. So let's, for talk's sake, say you had an example and you had this particular line, we'll call it L here, and you happen to see that it's cutting the y-axis there at 2, and you happen to know, or they give you in the question, that the slope of the line is 4. Then what we could do with that information is filling it in into y equals mx plus c. If the slope is 4, then 4 is m, and if where it's cutting the y-axis is positive 2 on the y-axis, the y is always the vertical, remember, the x the horizontal, then I can put that straight in there for the value c. C is always the y-intercept, in other words, where the line cuts the y-axis. So there is a very quick way of getting the line y equals 4x plus 2. Again, I will talk about this a little bit more in the video on intersecting lines. All right.